I psyched you out. I started off with muted, but I actually now have made a little sign for myself saying muted, and so I'm going to put that on the mic when I've muted myself. So hello guys, how are you doing? Let me just check to make sure the stream is broadcasting. You know, it's more work than you would think to set these things up. I always somehow manage to find myself running late, it seems like, no matter what I do. But I'll try to balance that light out a little bit better. Hello! Happy Sunday! Everything seems to be going fine. I see the chat. Hello. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday morning, or afternoon, or evening, or whatever day it is, where you are. I'm doing well, and weekends are always so short. I have to say, Friday night is like my favorite space of time. Just because, I mean, I like my job. I'm in that. I'm not... I'm very spoiled in that I enjoy what I do every day. But having... just being able to sleep in, being able to make myself a leisurely breakfast, that's like the small joys in life. But one of the other joys in my life has been this show, which is talking to you guys and hanging out on a Sunday. It's been very nice. And it looks like this is going to be, for 2019, how we're going to proceed. That means I probably won't do a lot of pre-prepared videos. You know, I won't be doing edited videos so much in 2019. I'll be focusing most on the happy hour and on this show. And that's just so that I can keep YouTubing while I'm busy at work. So what do I have to talk with you guys about today? Well, there's been lots of things going on in the world, and I did create a lineup of things to talk about. One of them is Candace Owens, but I think what's more important to start with, even though Candace is a lot of fun, well, it was an issue I wanted to bring up in the happy hour with Kevin, but if you guys remember that happy hour, it was freaking miserable. There was a lot of horrible things that we went over, and I decided not to pile on. We had sort of enough of pain and suffering in the world caused by people's stupidity and hatred. All right, sorry, I got distracted by a question, but this was, I thought, a pretty big deal. Let me swap the screens here, because I did want to give my take on this, but I see Mike Bala, for whom I have much affection, is asking a question in the chat. So let's see. Okay, stupid question, but what does Kristi do as a job? Oh, aside from throwing Sargon through windows live on stream and laughing and crying with Kevin on the happy hour and hanging with you guys. I am professionally a social scientist. So it's, my job isn't, I've changed jobs. I'm trying to center myself. I've put my camera in a new place, and yeah, and that way, that's better. Oh, I see what the problem is. Okay. I have to move a little bit this way, right? I do a lot of things. So I'm sorry, my job changed at the start of the year, and I moved over to a different team inside of the Leibniz Institute, for which I work, and I now am coordinating a training program across a consortium of social science data archives, both for researchers and for staff, to increase their skills and to introduce them to digital tools or other digital infrastructures that will help them optimize their time and efficiency, and also provide researchers with the most up-to-date information. So part of my job is that, which includes now I've taken over a work package on a European funded project. So this year's focused a lot on the deliverables that are within my original work package. And the other one, it has to do with cross-national survey data and harmonization. There's a lot of things. So basically I'm kind of, I've recently been moved up into middle management, shall we say, and I'm overseeing the training of like consortium staff, or helping to organize those trainings. And then I'm also working on, well, I've worked on developing a open source and free digital software that helps social scientists harmonize, and actually anyone could use it, medical scientists or whatever, but harmonize measures in a transparent way. See, this is why I don't talk about my job, because it's really boring AF. It's totally cool to me as a nerd, but when I start actually explaining it, it sounds really, really dumb. Not really dumb. It just sounds not very exciting as it is, and it is quite exciting. I think it is, anyway. So this is why I don't generally talk about my job. It's a lot of description. But I was actually going to talk about Virginia, and Virginia Democrats, but also now a Virginia Republican. You guys might have heard one of I think the GOP state Senate leader has admitted to also wearing blackface. So, yes, Northam, who's got to go. I mean, this guy is morally, basically, he has no moral standing. He screwed up his own apology tour. It's just over. It's over for him. He was be marginalized. He won't be effective as a governor. I mean, clearly the guy is desperate to stay in power, and he's willing to put his own one-shot 4-year experience of being governor above his reputation, above his family's peace of mind, above the entire party. He's being a selfish white dude. As you know, like, he's entitled to this job even though everyone is telling him he's not qualified for it, or what he's done is disqualifying. It's not that he's not qualified, it's that he's disqualified himself. So I'm not like, Northam, go, gone. That one seems very obvious. There's also there's another guy whose name, there's so many people to keep track of these days. I know everyone's really focused on Northam, but his attorney general, let's see. Yes, here we go. Senate Majority Leader Thomas Normet acknowledged he was among several editors in 1968. The Virginia Military Institute's yearbook had racist photos in it. So, way to go, U.S. military being totally racist. Now, there's also the Virginia Attorney General, and I'm trying to find out his name. And then we'll get to Fairfax after. Here we go. Attorney General Mark Herring is the other guy. So, if you remember, but just to catch everybody up so we're all on the same page, Northam was outed. Someone found the picture, and he did a very bad job of handling the public relations around it. The fundamental contention is he didn't want to resign his job, and he put himself in a position where everyone wants him to resign his job. And he's pulling a Trump. He's basically just refusing to leave, selfishly and for his own concern and for his own benefit, regardless of the costs. So screw that guy. I'm trying not to swear so much on a Sunday morning. Screw that guy. Then when that all blew up, people started to realize, people who had stuff in their backgrounds at least, probably started to get a little bit nervous. And the Attorney General decided that it was better to ask for forgiveness first, not permission, forgiveness as a starting point. He had a press conference announcing that he too, in his youth, had put on blackface. And now we also find that this Republican, what's his name again? Yes, Senate Majority Leader Thomas Normet, who is the Republican of Senate Majority Leader, edited the yearbook that had racist pictures in it. This is not a party issue. This is a white people problem. This is a white racist problem, and it has nothing, one could say it's, the people involved are Democrats or Republicans, but racism transcends party lines. So I think it's more informative to look at how if you want to talk about it in a partisan lens, to look at how the parties are handling it, but that's not the conversation I want to have. I feel very confident about stating publicly that Northam should go. Everyone has agreed that he handled this poorly. When it comes to the Attorney General, I'm more interested in sort of deferring my opinion to the people who live in Virginia, especially the black voters. I mean, okay, let's take it. I think people, it's realistic, and there's some racist ass things that white people have done. Like, that's just stipulated. and what's going to happen now moving forward when in a party that is meant to be open to people regardless, you know, of all backgrounds. How do you own those sins? Do you just basically cut those people off entirely? Or is there learning moments that we can get out of this? And I have to say, I personally feel a little bit uncomfortable with the ease with which people say, oh, well, you know, that was 30 years ago, let's move on. The offense is fresh. You know, the offense just happened in terms of finding this stuff out. And it seems particularly to me white people who want to be able to say, okay, well, how do we get him to redemption? Without even like talking about getting to accountability first. And I see this as a problem. I see it, how we, especially white people, want to just say, oh yeah, that was really bad, but you know, isn't there a space for grace? Like, is there a space to be mad first? Is there a space to react to this affront and acknowledge it? Or are we right away running to how, you know, like some Christian platitudes that we don't seem to use when African American kids are involved in these kinds of things? Therefore, on the Attorney General Mark Herring issue, I'm willing to, or I'd prefer, I think my role as a white ally here is to not form an opinion and just go out there. I want to hear from the African American community. I want to hear from the voters of Virginia on the Democratic side how to process this and how to be guided, because I don't think that my opinion on the solution is, you know, it would be not from lived experience, it would not be from personal experience, it would be an outsider's perspective. So that's how I feel about that. And if the general consensus from voters in Virginia, especially African American voters who provided margins of victories for both of these white guys, if they say, no, it's just too far, I'll be like, they say it's too far. Bye. Bye. I mean, I'm not going to override the wishes of the voters on this, you know? I'm going to side with the people who have to live in Virginia. I mean, I know I don't want to crap on Virginia. I think Virginia is a nice city, but the environment and the history of racism clearly is unresolved. As much as I think the white part of America wants to put everything in the past, it's because they don't live with it. We don't live with it. In terms of, yeah, and the Republican guy, well, if Republicans are calling on Northam to resign, then they need to hold that guy accountable too. So we can't have standards based on party. That's the last thing I want to say on the blackface part of it, is that if Ted Cruz is going to be going out there saying, Northam's got to go because he was pictured with blackface, well, then when one of his candidates is enabling it and approving of it and being an editor who has control over the content and signs off on it, that is also disqualifying. And what about maybe standing in front of treasonous flags? Like Ted Cruz has occasionally been filmed in front of a Confederate flag or supporting groups that display the racist Confederate flag. So maybe that's disqualifying, Ted. What do you think? All right. Also, being Sunday, I've got my Hamilton, because Hamilton is my, yeah, here we go. My Sunday relax wear, and I have my Mooka mug. So when it's time to get coffee refreshed, I will be refilling it in my beautiful, other side, porcelain mug I got in Prague. Yay! That was, do I still have it in here? I showed you guys some stuff from Prague before, and really, really want to go back. Anyway. Let's talk about the lieutenant governor. And I always feel pressure to make sure I get people's names right. So, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Now, this is a different case for a couple reasons. One, it's a different issue. I'm going to try to fix this. That's a bit better. Is that too much? It's a little too much. I'm going to fix this in the break, I think. It's my first time trying it out in that direction. I think I messed it up a lot. Oh my goodness. I shouldn't do this live. I should just leave it alone, even if it's imperfect. Right, there we go. Okay. Justin Fairfax. Now this is a different issue because it's a whole different topic. It also has a completely different set of evidence frameworks to work with. And so there's a lot of other things going on here. We're talking about, in the previous story, 3 white guys getting caught associating with some racist ass stuff. The evidence is out there. They're admitting to it. They can't deny it. The facts are clear. And then the question is, what is the moral thing to do? What is the example of accountability, responsibility, and ownership of your mistakes that we want to set for ourselves? And clearly, these white men just don't want to give up power. They would rather debase themselves. At least Northam is willing to debase himself to cling on to power, which is disgusting. And this is why no Democrat will associate with him, and why everyone is, shunning him. Sorry, cough in the mic. I didn't mean to do that. The Justin Fairfax situation is different. I've held off commenting on this because I follow the practice of believing the victim. Not saying that I unquestionably accept the first victim's story as true, so much as I give equal weight to the accounts of both people. I don't give him a presumption of innocence, that somehow now she's got a huge, sort of mountain of evidence that she has to climb. So I don't favor him, and I also don't unquestionably favor her. I did this with Christine Blasey Ford as well. And if you remember, over time, the evidence, the corroboration came out, and I think it culminated in that case, the Kavanaugh hearings, the moment America was distracted from the truth was when Dr. Ford had described the party as being on a weeknight, as having certain people there, at being at a certain house. And Kavanaugh had brought his personal diaries or his calendar from that time period, swearing up and down that a party like that he had never attended it, and it wasn't described in his diary. Except there was a party on either July 1st or July 7th, I always mix it up, on a Wednesday night or something like that, weeknight, and the people that Dr. Ford named as being at the party she was at when she was assaulted were at the party he'd listed, Brewskis, and a bunch of his buddies' names. That was the party in the time period with the people that she had described. And when the woman who was investigated, if you go think back to the Senate hearings, the woman who had cross-examined Dr. Blasey Ford without Republicans stopping her in any way, when it came time to do the same to Kavanaugh, and she got to that date, that's when Lindsey Graham, go back and watch this, this is not a conspiracy, that's when Lindsey Graham interrupted the proceedings, took over, and stopped her questioning, and then for the rest of the time, Republicans just brigaded the mic and did not allow the same cross-examination of the facts of Kavanaugh to happen as happened to Dr. Ford. And I think when we go back, and I hope the next president will reopen the FBI, will ask the FBI to reinvestigate this, because this guy is a lying sack of shit who should not be on the Supreme Court. One of the things that they should go back and look at is why Senator Graham chose that moment to interfere, and also what were the questions that the woman had prepared ahead of time, and to look at the evidence of the calendar again, because Kavanaugh lied to the American people. Lindsey Graham was the distraction, and we now have somebody who committed perjury voting against Roe on the Supreme Court. How did we get here? Okay, sorry, this was a tangent. I think I was just doing some comparisons. Right, so when the Dr. Ford case came out, I wasn't, it's not, just like dismissing a victim, someone who comes forward as a victim of sexual assault and saying they're a liar, they want money, attributing to them those sort of motives and complete lack of credibility is unfair. And also to go on the other side and saying, no matter what the victim says, and I don't even know people who do this necessarily, no matter what the victim says, it's true. That is not what believe the victim means. Believe the victims means treat everybody's story as they are being sincere, and then proceed from there. They are honestly recounting what they experienced or what they remember of what they experienced. Whatever it is, you don't assume that they are lying. That's what believe the victims mean. Just treat them as credible. Treat them as serious. treat them as something to be investigated. When it comes to Justin Fairfax, it's been a back and forth. So I have been following this. I've been tweeting on it. I've not been commenting on it because there isn't enough evidence at this point for me to form any sort of informed opinion where I feel comfortable commenting on it. So if you remember Justin Fairfax, there was this thing about the whole news scandal kicked off about the blackface, and shortly thereafter, when Fairfax was discussed as being a possible replacement, a woman came forward with allegations she had also made in last year or a couple of years ago to the Washington Post. The Washington Post at the time looked into it, and the reason they didn't, it's not in this particular article, it's in a different article I read, but the reason the Washington Post didn't move forward with that investigation at the time was because they could not establish corroboration. We've been learning about this since the start of the Me Too movement. The idea that if you, it is often the case, but not always the case, that when someone is victimized, even if they don't feel comfortable or safe going to the police about it, they don't feel that that's a remedy that will provide them justice. They will confide in people whom they trust at the time, or nearer in time when they're processing what happened to them. And my read of what the Washington Post said was that they couldn't find anyone who she told at the time that this had happened. And that was the reason they didn't go forward. Now, does this mean she's not, does that mean, if she didn't tell somebody at the time, does that mean she's lying? No. It just means she didn't tell anybody at the time that can corroborate her story. So that was, then he came back, Fairfax came back with a denial, saying, I recall these events and I recall them being completely consensual, and, so he gave his sort of the he said part of it. Then a second woman came forward with sexual assault allegations, and then there was a call for there to be an investigation by some Virginia group, I don't know if it was Democrats or the state Senate or whatever, but they decided they wanted to call for Fairfax to be investigated over these allegations. The last that I saw was that Fairfax himself had asked the FBI to come in and conduct an investigation. So at every point when, there's been a sort of back and forth, like there's been an allegation and then he'll address it, and then there's a second allegation, there's this call for an investigation. Now Fairfax himself is calling for an investigation, and so I will continue to watch this because I don't have, all we have right now are people's stories. We're at the start of this. I think this is like a week old, this story, so there's no need to jump to an immediate conclusion. I think the women coming forward, many people find them credible. Other people are standing with the women. And so this is definitely, when we had the Kavanaugh thing, there were a couple, it seemed like cases that were, people who were maybe doing it because they were looking for the attention, they were mentally ill, they had some other kind of issue going on. Now, I don't want to be a doctor or anything, but I'm just saying that when you get a lot of media attention, you could have a case where people are making false or uncorroborated allegations, but that also does bring forward people who have experiences that they want to share, victimizations that once they see one other person break the ground and take a stand, they feel that happened to me too, and they'll step up. And that's where we are in this process. So a second person had come forward, we're going forward, and I'm watching this, and I'm not prejudicing my opinions in either way. I think it's a serious allegation that needs to be treated seriously, and both people need to be treated with respect, and the focus should be on gathering as much evidence as we can, or of trying to find out what happened. So that is I'm not waving away anything just because they're Democrats. That's not how I work. And I don't think we should dismiss women who make allegations just because of the party that they're making the allegation against. Again, that's not how I do things. So that is that bit of news for the day. Now let me swap over here. That's a little more comfortable. Because I did want to talk about Candace Owens, but I think that the way I have it set up is my sound is a setup for the happy hour setup instead of this one where it should come through the audio inside the desktop. But hold on, I have to cough. Thank you. But before we do that, let's have a look at the chat. So if you guys have some things you want to say, I've already missed, I know, the some of the things you might have said before, so I apologize, but we'll do a little chat time now for a few minutes, and then we can see if we can get this Candace Owens thing to work, because she says so many dumb things, like seriously dumb things, and I think this one is worth pointing out. So let's see. So I've got my tablet here. I can scroll up and down. Let me see if I see anyone else sort of atting me in any way. Y'all are question, do I work more than Trump? Everybody. Anyone who does a day's work, like you know, just cleaning your house on a Sunday as you would, or doing some laundry on a Saturday, means you do more work than Trump. He is the most useless person ever. How is this guy going to prove that it's not him in blackface? I don't think anyone is trying to say that it's not them in blackface. I mean, even for Northam, who said he was questioning the picture, admitted he put on shoe polish to be Michael Jackson. Idiot. And again, it also just makes me think of this lie that white America likes to tell itself, that, you know, racism isn't really a problem anymore. They were telling that lie back in the 80s. When I was a kid, oh yeah, in the 60s it was bad. You know, but things are so much better now. And meanwhile, this shit was going on. All right. I think we need to paradigm shift thinking about race and using terms like black and white. I prefer the term ethnicity to race. I've been trying actually to adjust and wherever possible, use the word ethnicity rather than race. I think that white and black, I think that that's just a heuristic. And I don't know that you can really, I mean, I think the other thing too is a white person. I have read studies that white people are much less comfortable even mentioning another person's race, where people who are the minority ethnicity in a country, that's their reality. So they do deal with brown people, black people, white people, and it's much less taboo. So if we start to erase terms like black and white, you might end up trying to linguistically erase the problem. So I do understand why you get a discomfort maybe with the idea of races, because there's a human race, and we come from different backgrounds, but I'm, as I said, trying to choose to use the word ethnicity rather than race. All right, so let's see if there's anything. No, not a lot of questions today. So where am I on the Green New Deal? Well, where I am on the Green New Deal is that it's a proposal submitted to a Democratic House with a Republican Senate, so it's not going anywhere. I mean, that's the real, you know, politics on it. It's not happening. It'll never see light in the Senate. But it's just as with the voting rights bill or other things that Nancy Pelosi knows is not going to get through. It's important to start the process, to start the conversation, to start the discussion, so that in the next Congress, you don't have to waste time having these conversations. You can already advance a little bit of where people are, where they need to be, how they want it to fit their particular maybe states' needs or industries that are relevant to them, and get engaged with that early rather than later, because then it can help the bill, you know, you can build on some solid ground going forward. But in terms of that, it's a policy wish, not a policy like a practical outcome. So I don't get too caught up in the details of what it is, because it's more, I don't want to say it's symbolic. It has more benefit than that for the policy evolution of it, but it's not going to go anywhere, so I don't make that much of an effort to know all the details and defend it. Question from 255. Should the next Democratic administration pay reparations to the trans people Trump's throwing out of the military? I would imagine that I don't know how the law works in terms of wrongful termination with the military, and it's not really up to the president, I don't think, in that way, to pay reparations. What it would be is, it wouldn't be reparations. So that term is, I think, generally reserved for the concept of the economic theft perpetrated for generations on African Americans, and the fact that the government has historically disproportionately advantaged white people building up their wealth. An example of that is the GI Bill. And that because of the racism in the government, white people had basically more of a direct transfer of national wealth into their personal pockets through mortgages or through education. And that in order to level the playing field, we should provide an equitable economic basis for those historically disadvantaged by slavery and government racist policies in order to catch up with. So that's where I come in with reparations. I wouldn't use reparations to talk about trans people, but you would have maybe like a wrongful dismissal or some sort of prejudice case. However, the Supreme Court generally is lenient on executive orders because of the constitutional powers of the executive. So that was a long answer. The short answer is no. I don't see them doing it, mostly because it's not legally practical, and there's no law, there's no legal process for that. So right, let's see. So are you aware that it's just, I don't know what softening up means in that case. Bruce, sorry. Do I ever get to read for fun novels and comics, depressing important stuff? What I read for fun, sadly, is like history. And that's because I find the stories told that are real to be sometimes as fascinating and dramatic as anything told by in our own imaginations. So let me just introduce you to an author whom I admire quite a lot, and I'll swap over. Nope, that's the one we're already in. Swapsies. There we go. Alison Weir. She's an author, a historian whom I admire a lot, and anytime she writes a book, I'll buy it now. Like, I don't even care what the content is. But I didn't realize I was sort of doing this, and it wasn't completely obvious to me until looking back sort of decades later. But when you look at her life's work, her oeuvre, she drifts toward and then primarily focuses on women and women's stories in medieval life. That's interesting to me because women's stories were usually supporting characters when the main characters are men. Women historically are cast as supporting characters in terms of the object of desire, or maybe the evil, woman who's trying to gain power, or the submissive, obedient wife. Sorry. And as you see through her, I'm just scrolling through her body of work here, she's really interested in unpacking who these women are more from their own perspectives and their own experiences and their own views of the world. It was, for me, really, really super fascinating. And because it's not history I'd been exposed to before. I was always, given history books with male heroes and leads. Hearing her defend, Isabella, or giving a sympathetic account of Margaret Tudor, the mother of Henry VII, whatever else. This is I'm blanking on her name, but I think but it was Margaret. I'm trying to remember how she's titled. But in the end, I very little actual reading for fun, purely fun's sake. So I'm totally a nerd. On a scale of 1 to 10, how nuts is the conservative misrepresentation of choice legislation and as infanticide? Yeah, Bruce, I'm right there with you. The thing is that we have to, I think, always remember that the ultimate goal of the evangelical movement when it comes to reproduction in America is not only to make abortion illegal everywhere, it's also to regulate or make difficult contraception. They are completely against anything that promotes women's bodily autonomy. We saw that with the Hobby Lobby case, that women now have to get their employer's permission. It's like a form of, you know, a chattel again. You need to go and either pay extra for medically approved things like birth control, which are not only used to prevent pregnancies, they're used for migraines and to regulate cycles, and they have a lot of other, you know, the fact that a woman is on the pill doesn't mean she's a slut. It could be that she's, you know, treating it for her menstrual pains. You don't, and this is it, these guys don't know and they don't care. So the question was, the misrepresentation is always at a 10. Always. They will always lie. Always. Always. They always have. They always will. Because they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in eliminating women's bodily autonomy and reminding society that women's lives are worth less than the babies they produce. Women are just baby machines. Ultimately, they will always pick making the woman's body disposable if it means the possibility of maybe a male child. Okay. And they're like, no, it doesn't matter if it's a girl or a boy. Like, look, patriarchy is not about advancing female power. You know, it's the opposite of that. Right, 11. Yes, James Russell, on a scale of 1 to 10, they are an 11. Let's see. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll kind of... All right. Hardcore Christians say they love God's creation, but hold most of it down. Hashtag facts, nobody listens. Absolutely. 255 says kings are always given devious wives in depictions because it's a way to avoid blaming the king for the bad or cruel choices. Just say his wife tricked him into doing it. Even when the queens were... Sorry, my face is so itchy. I notice I'm touching my face a lot. I'll try to stop doing that. I think it's because I had, like, did my hair up and then I got trimmed it and I got bits. Anyway, let's take the case of Henry VIII. Catherine of Aragon, who was his wife for 20-some years. They were married like a really long time before he dumped her for a younger model. But she was more badass than him in terms of military victories. Henry wasn't that great on the military, on the battlefield. He had some minor victories, and he went over to France one time. But once when he was over in France trying to siege and take this kind of small, crappy town, the Scots came over the border because England, the king was away. So they're like, all right, we're going to take advantage of this and we're going to try to mess with the English. So they came over and Queen Catherine like led the war. And her mother was Catherine of Aragon, don't forget. And so she went out there, kicked his ass, and sent Henry back like a bloody flag because she'd killed the leader of the rebellion or even the king or took him prisoner. Anyway, she was badass. Her battle turned out better than his. She was more victorious in her warring, but of course Henry always gets all the glory because he's the man, right? So queens are, yes, either used to, you know, blame. With Anne Boleyn, you know, she was blamed for all kinds of, well, I mean, mostly for cheating on the king, but other people latched onto that. The Catholics, who were very anti the Reformation, also could latch onto those stories and make those women into terrible, evil whores, or shrill, shrews. You know, whenever a woman has an opinion, it's a bad thing in history generally. But Henry founded a whole new church to get laid. Yeah, well, you didn't say that, James. You said that he founded a whole new church so he could get a divorce. But really, what he founded the whole new church and got the divorce once he, slid the letter into the envelope and couldn't handle waiting with Anne anymore, and then she got pregnant and he's like, okay, we're getting married. That's happened a lot in history. Okay, do we have, what's the time now? I'm just wondering if we should take our break now or if we should do the Candace. Let's see if we can get Candace going here. I am going to try to change the audio on the fly, so this should be completely nightmarish. If not, we'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way like I do with Kevin on the happy hour. But I've just swapped the location of the sound from my external speakers to my desktop. Let's have a look here and see if we can get this to work. Now, I don't know if you guys saw Candace Owens was a dumbass in public again. I don't know if this is a pretty typical position for Candace to take in public, but she did it again. And let's go ahead. I know I'll be able to see this if it does work or not. So play this, and if not, like I said, we can always do the audio in a different way. Oh yeah,
I agree. I actually don't.
Okay, not only am I getting it on the desktop, I'm getting it externally as well, which would be really super confusing for you guys. So let me turn down my external thing there. And I've also turned Candace down because she was definitely, what's the word I'm looking for? Peaking, I guess. Okay. So if you guys don't know, Candace Owens Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens are trying to bring their attacks on university campuses, their like sort of systematic attacks on university campuses and university faculty for thinking. Basically, that's what they find really, really troubling. From the US into the UK, by bringing this group, Turning Point UK. The aim of the group would be to, like I said, basically try to content police university lecturers. This has been happening on the in the United States since the 1960s. The demonization of higher learning institutes by the right wing is perfect fit for its anti-intellectualism and its emotional-based populist sort of demagoguery that is fundamental, it seems, to reactionary movements. So Candace, if you guys remember the happy hour I did with Kevin, you'll know that Candace is not the brightest bulb in the package. She doesn't read. She clearly doesn't read. She uses words not correctly. She has no depth of understanding, and yet she has very strong opinions. She's very confident in her ignorance. Almost the confidence of a mediocre white man. Just in that way. When she opens her mouth and says dumb things, like we're going to watch her say now, and people call her out for saying dumb things, her reaction and other reactionaries' reaction is to get defensive and say, no, you're misunderstanding, not, yeah, Candace is a dumbass. Candace is a dumbass is the right answer in this case. She is being a complete idiot, and I will explain to you why. I'll explain again how difficult it is for people on the right, apparently, to understand what words are. You know, I have said repeatedly that the main problem I have with Carl is that he uses words and he doesn't understand what they mean. He uses patriarchy incorrectly. He uses feminism incorrectly. And I can't take you seriously, especially when you're going to go on and on about, like, you know, being a British, identifying as a British nationalist, which I think is what his current political identity is. But to say that and then not be able to speak freaking English, moron! How can you? It's the one you only want to learn one language. Can you please learn what the words in that language mean? And Candace gets herself in trouble. I'm going to just tell you now, spoiler alert, because she doesn't know the difference between globalization and expansionism, or globalism as the right wing calls it, and expansionism, because she doesn't study history, and she doesn't study political science, and she doesn't study words or concepts or philosophies or anything. And then she runs her dumbass mouth and says dumbass things, and she gets called for it and she cries. So let's go ahead and talk about the fact that, or listen to Candace put her foot in her mouth. We all ready? All right, so let's go back again. I think we've got the sound right this time. Oh, so if in case you can't read that, I will make this super huge. Yeah, you can. That's still perfect in the screen. Hurrah! Owens was asked by an audience member at a London event launching the British chapter of Turning Point USA, the conservative campus group she helps lead, for her thoughts on the future of nationalist movements. Right? So the future of nationalist movements, what are the... And then, yeah, I'm just gonna... Boop, I'm not gonna say anything. Let her talk.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. So,
all right. Does everyone see the problem here? Okay. If you don't, it's okay. I actually wanted to make sure myself. So last night, I made sure I looked up the difference between. See, it's already there. It's already on my previews. So we've got globalism. Now, globalism isn't so much an ism. It's a right-wing bullshit idea of globalism. But so we've got here, okay, the operation or planning of economic and foreign policy on a global basis. And people also talk about globalization. Now, globalization is the process of interaction and integration among the people, companies, governments of different nations, a process driven by international trade, investment, and aided by technology. So globalization talks about the fact to which things, people, money, ideas, interactions have been able to happen not only locally, but increasingly on a global scale. Companies are liberated to move wherever they want. They can go anywhere in the world generally and operate. And that is a difference from 150 years ago when, you know, the railroads were an amazing invention in terms of getting goods across the country. Globalization is a process that's been happening for decades. And the right wing has a lot of issues with it, but let's go on here. So the operation or planning of economic and foreign policy on a global basis is globalism. What else do we have here from Merriam-Webster? A national policy of treating the whole world as a proper sphere for political influence. So clearly American policy is one of globalism if you take that if you take that definition. So this is adorable. Thank you, Merriam-Webster. This is a happy picture. There's your moment of zen. You're never too cool to learn something new. I agree with that, though. Every day's a school day. Every day is a school day. Let's see. What else have we got here? Wiki. All right, so we'll do a final last one on globalism, just to really get, I mean, because it's not, again, like with racism, you read one definition, not enough. You know, you have to look not only at a dictionary, but look at an encyclopedia, and then maybe look at a book of theory from the field. Here, Wikipedia says globalism refers to various systems with scope beyond the merely international. It is used by political scientists, such as Joseph Nye, to describe, quote, attempts to understand all the interconnections of the modern world and to highlight patterns that underlie and explain them, unquote. While primarily associated with world systems, it can be used to describe other global trends. The term is also used by detractors of globalization, such as populist movements. So that's globalism. You see how it's sort of expansive, talks about creating links, moving things around, or it's the study of it. All right. Now let's think about what Hitler did. And even Candace describes it as an exporting of German culture, this idea that, you know, the culture of Germany should be exported out across the world. That's not globalization. That's not globalism. He wasn't talking about creating business links across the world. What was Hitler doing? Well, I think you could look at it as let's go this way. Expansionism. Oh, I have to put define. That's what, because I was trying to define things. So I first tried, I didn't put Nazi expansionism because I wanted to see if there was a subcategory. So expansionism, the policy of territorial or economic expansion. That's what Hitler was doing. He was expanding his territory and expanding his, you know, his economic reach, but he wasn't global in that he was creating partnerships or trying. Do you see what I mean? You see the difference between military expansionism? And this is why I went even farther in terms of my research, because I learned, because I'm not a historian, I don't do this professionally, there's an actual term for the kind of expansionist policies that the Nazis practiced. It's called Lebensraum, or like a living space. And so, again, this is on Wiki. Candace there's no paywall here that is preventing her from accessing this information, right? So what was Lebensraum? The German concept of Lebensraum, sorry, I got all distracted by the pop-ups here, comprised policies and practices of settler colonialism, which proliferated in Germany from the 1890s until the 1940s. First popularized around 1901, Lebensraum became a geopolitical goal of Imperial Germany during World War I, originally as the core element of a September program of territorial expansion. Not globalism, not globalization, Candace. Expansionism. The most extreme form of this ideology was supported by the Nazi Party and Nazi Germany until the end of World War II. Candace. And then it became following Adolf Hitler's rise to power. Lebensraum became an ideological principle of Nazism and provided justification for the German territorial expansion. Expansion, Candace. Expansionism into Central and Eastern Europe. So, dumbass. You want to claim people should speak English in America? Start, please. You and Carl both need to start speaking English, and that means using the words correctly. Using the words correctly. Am I going crazy here? Is that so much to ask? People use words in the language they keep going on about correctly. All right. Okay, so this all kicked off. So Candace said this dumbass stuff. I guess we should probably let her finish her dumbassery. Should we do that? Yeah, of course we should. We'll give her equal time. She goes on and she says really dumb things. So let's just wrap that up so we can say that we've been comprehensive in providing her context.
Thinking about...
Oh, you need to see this. Would that be helpful, guys? Would you like to see what I'm looking at? Sorry. Go big. Let me go big. I'll go big! All right. Big. All the way big. Booyah. Okay.
How it could go bad down the line.
I'll go back a little bit here.
So, in thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I don't have anything problem. I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid. Oh, hello.
All right, before we move on to her apology, can we just get a little reaction here in the chat? So I'll go ahead. I'll make this. Let's have a fireside chat, everybody. There's your fireside. Yeah, some thoughts about expansionism versus globalization or globalism. My German R is really good. Oh, thank you. Yeah, actually, honestly, I think that helped. Like, I studied French before I studied German, and there's a lot of airy R's in French as well. So James Russell says, it's a fucking women's march, Bernie, which I don't know why, but thank you. Like, I don't know where that comes from, but that's nice. My coffee's getting cold, by the way, so I'm going to start signaling. Yeah, and it's also almost the top of the hour. So we're going to come back to Candace on the other side after the break, but I'll read through the comments now, and thank you for the I want to get a complete sidebar. I think that there are apps that you can get where you can record little sounds, you know, and then just sort of hit the button and play them. I'm sure that that's available. And of course I don't have the time for this, but I would love if during the happy hour I could have that soundboard app and then have some great sargonisms like it's a fucking women's march, and also the blah sound he makes in the background. Oh, so many good things. And do a whole bunch of you know, quips from various dumbass people, and then be able to play it back during the show. That would be too much like a morning zoo radio, though. Let's see. My Windows is giving me random notifications that I don't need again. Natalie says she's cool with the final solution so long as it was confined to Germany. That's precisely right. I mean, I'm going on and on about the incorrect use of words, but there's a larger point here, and thank you, Natalie, for pointing it out, and let's bring it back. That the reason people were freaking out was not for the thing that I was having a go at her for. It was the fact that she's basically like, look, the problem with Hitler was that he wanted to impose German culture on other people. That was the problem, and that's why everyone's like, what? What are you saying? And it definitely comes across as if she is saying that, look, if Hitler had just kept his genocide within his own territorial borders, whatevs. That's like, I don't want to get involved with that. And that is why people started freaking out, because she said multiple dumb things, but mostly what she didn't realize, again, lack of history, lack of understanding, lack of listening, is she is in London, which was bombed by the Nazi regime. That, the UK had been fighting, the US joined the war relatively late compared to everybody else who's dragged into it earlier. They had been fighting and dying. That's the Second World War is a national day of remembrance. It's a huge somber day. You wear the poppy. In the United States, we feel like we have a lot of patriotism. The British they focus in some ways. The emphasis is more on the dead. The sign of the poppy symbol represents the field on which men were slaughtered. And women died in those as a consequence of these wars too, right? But in this case, we're talking about, military being highly gendered, but it's sort of off the point. But the fact is that sacrifice, the poppy fields, the death, and the First World War too, that echo is still much more part of the British consciousness. National suffering is associated with the rise of Hitler, and also with the pointless war, the First World War. That was just a complete generational slaughter. So when you go to a place the country that fought, where people fought Hitler on that soil, you're standing in London that was bombed by Hitler, and say the problem with him was that, he wanted to impose German culture. That was his problem. So yeah, Natalie, I'm nattering on, but you're totally right. She gave the impression that the problem with Hitler was expansionism, not his policies. And that's her fault. That's not our fault for not giving her some sort of assumed benefit of the doubt. She could have easily said, look, there are a lot of things I could criticize. There are so many things I could criticize Hitler on. There are so many moral issues and human rights issues on which we can all justifiably crap on Hitler. She didn't want to swear in front of her audience. But one of the things, and then go on to about expansionism. And knowing the difference between expansionism and globalism would have been helpful. But yes. Going down. Let's see. Looking for anything else that says, like, because 255 knows how to do it. He's like, question in all caps. People tag me with a little @ sign. You're talking as if you expect Candace and co to actually know what they're talking about and having researched it. Yeah, Matt, I know. It's so ridiculous to think that if somebody's going to go on a stage and talk, that they're there for a reason. This is like the Tim Weiss thing, which I should actually, I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to talk about, this is my other thing. I'm trying to stay a bit more mentally focused because I tend to natter a lot. So I've got notes now. Last time it was Gary Edwards. I don't know who I was talking to, but I had to talk to somebody about Gary Edwards. Am I also breaking up from time to time? Is the feed a little bit on the snappy side? Are you guys getting some? I don't know if that's the problem with some of the things I've got going on in the background. Oh, that must have been fun to listen to. But anyway, let me finish this thought. I wanted to talk about. Oh, see, now I already forgot. I forgot what I wanted to talk about next time. Anyway, I think it's time for me to get more coffee. I'm hitting the mic. The stream looks like it's a little bit on the jumpy side, so I'm going to close out some of that windows going on here. We can always come back to this if we need to. And let's have a 5-minute break. So let's see, we've got exactly top of the hour. I told you my internal clock is awesome. Oh wow, I managed to actually get it right on the top of the hour. All right, Go get yourself a fresh coffee, get yourself some fresh air, go hydrate yourself, have a power nap, whatever you want to do for the next 4.5 minutes. I am going to swap over to the pre-show bit, and we will be back to continue with Candace's dumbassery and whatever else comes up in the second half of the show. So see you guys in a bit, and I'm going to put on my muted sign so that I remember. Okay, it's on there now. All right, guys, see you in a bit. Bye-bye. See? It works. It's a very simple idea, but actually really helps. Because again, I come back, I got my coffee, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, and I managed to not mess up twice in this show. So, you know, that's a good thing, right? Yeah, guys. You've missed the first 5 minutes of the stream. Just you can go back. It's okay. Yeah. So on the stream, I don't know what you guys do. I guess I usually a lot of times when I jump into a stream and it's been going for a while, I'll see if I can figure out the conversation from the live thing. But a lot of times I'll just like go back and scrub through. But what did I do in the first part of the show? If you've missed it, I went over the Virginia blackface and sexual assault allegations, my position on those, and then we just started dunking on Candace, right? That was pretty much the show. So, let's see what happened. You guys are, I see you in the chat. Natalie's starting an IT course tomorrow. Good luck. You won't be fresh in the morning. Oh, well, hopefully we are sending you our best wishes. So you have like the version of an e-hug or a hand squeeze, whatever you feel supportive. Good luck on your course tomorrow. Do other people actually hold hangouts? I'd like to participate in more discussions than just hear about the less. Well, I don't know. Do your own channel, Whistler. Make the content that you want to see. Oh, Candace, she's so sure about her Blexit movement is going to work out. Yeah, she's sad, as pointed out. Mike, you can make me a fancy sign, a fancy muted sign like this. I need yeah, like an on-air, off-air, if that's what you're talking about. A fancy muted sign. Oh, that's, all right, sorry, my camera also is in a new position, in a new spot. So let me, I kind of light my face a bit more. I got lights down here so you guys can see me. Right, is that, there we go. That should be better. And let's see. Who is that? In your computers? I'm really sorry. Have I seen Carco Peak neoliberalism? That's how I say neoliberalism when I can't pronounce it correctly. Okay, so yeah, let's, hold on guys. I'm clearly having mic issues here. Hello. Okay, so this mic, I guess I can natter while I fix it. There is an app that allows you to turn your mobile phone into a webcam. And I think I've talked a little bit about this before. The webcam that I have is crappy, and therefore I prefer to use my phone. The thing is that I'm trying a new thing where instead of setting it up on the tripod, I'm hanging it off the TV so that it's more on my eye level, but I'm just getting the hang of how to arrange it. And I'm looking at it on screen now and it's looking pretty good. So I think other than like just, I need a little bit better lighting. But other than that, I think everything is okay. So I'll bring this back here a bit more. Right, we were gonna finish talking about Candace, weren't we? So let's go back and finish that video. I've got to open it up now. Off topic. Do I like the rapper MF Doom? I don't know MF Doom, but I do have to talk later about Token. I'm gonna be talking about Token coming up here in a little bit, and we're gonna look at a bit of his video. And then I want next week to look at some Screwface Gene, because his fans are so awesome. Whenever I talk about Screwface Gene, they come in here and they give real love. Like that's a really good community, and I have a lot of respect for them. And also I really like his music. He's done some great collabs of late, and I want to feature that, but I also have to balance out my hip-hop love with news and things that are people are more used to me doing on my channel. All right, so let's go back. We were gonna, Hitler was okay until he tried to go global. All right, we've already seen that, but now, continuing on with the Candace Owens story. As you guys might know, this kind of blew up on Twitter. This event actually took place in December. So it was out there and kicking around, but like a lot of things, sometimes you have to wait for it to get discovered. Somebody with a big some Twitter clout has to finally be shown it and retweet it. And I'm not entirely sure how this got out, who gave it the attention it finally deserved, but it did. It got out, and there was it blew up. You know, people freaked out on Twitter, as you do when, you know, people defend or seem to be defending Hitler. And then the apologetics. It's not Candace's fault that she doesn't speak clearly and that you can't read her mind, people. It's not Candace's fault that she uses words like globalism when she should use word like expansionism. And it's not Candace's fault that she selects Hitler as an example on her own. Like, no one asked her about Hitler. Nobody. The question before was about nationalism, and she introduced Hitler into the conversation, right? But none of that is her fault, you guys. None of it. So she had to go online and basically, well, I'll let you decide for yourself what you think this is. So this is the Candace Owens Periscope response to people calling her on her crap.
Hello. Random Periscope, because I just turned on my phone on my Twitter for the first time today, and I had all of these notifications.
Guys, would you like to see the screen? I was so focused on balancing out her audio because this audio is much softer than the last audio, and so I was realizing that I was going to need to do a on-the-fly sound editing. But let's go back and start, so now you can actually see her and hear her at the same time.
I turned on my phone on my Twitter for the first time today, and I had all of these notifications from journalists quoting, being like, Candace Owens launches a defense for Hitler's form of nationalism. Some of the most crazy, and this is like, it's actually so insane, it's so ridiculous that it could only come from BuzzFeed, which is obviously scum of the earth.
Right, not going into the fact that she doesn't know what words mean. She's going to, of course, do a character assassination on BuzzFeed for committing the crime of quoting her accurately.
Publication. But just to clarify this, because I had about 50 emails from journalists reaching out asking for clarity. I was at an event in the UK and a question was asked, not about Hitler, but about the difference between, we're talking about globalism versus nationalism. I think the person asked how...
Globalism versus nationalism? That was not the question. Hold on, let's time mark this. We are at 1:58. And she was asked her thoughts on the future of nationalist movements. Okay, just like for the record, we can find the actual wording of the question. I won't do it during the show, but just to be clear here, what her memory is and how she's setting this up.
How can we, as people that, you know, believe in the sovereignty of our nations, avoid being called nationalists? And I thought that the person was sort of implying that nationalism is a dirty word, and we see that a lot in America, that nationalism is sort of conflated with, for some reason,
white nationalism, because that's what it is. It's nationhood based on whiteness. It's the idea of property and political power granted on the basis of your skin color. White nationalism. That's why nationalism has a negative association in the United States. It's not because of Hitler. It's because of racist-ass white people, KKK people, other kinds of racist stuff going on that has happened over centuries, and actually quoting people who want to have an ethno-state. That's why nationalism has a bad rap in the United States.
Hitler, like that, the only interpretation or the only understanding of the word nationalism that people seem to have in America is they instantly think of Hitler.
Again, no. White nationalism is associated with the KKK. She's, again, conflating, I think, just calls for being how nationalism and fascism are tied together. Again, I don't want to keep going on about how uninformed and ill-educated she is, how unread she is. I'm not saying I'm perfect and I know all of these things with a PhD level, but I look things up before I talk. Or if I'm not sure, I say I'm not sure that's correct, please don't quote me on it, or I'm willing to be corrected if that is factually an error. But what she does is speak with profound confidence on things that she doesn't understand, and then she gets herself in trouble.
And I think that that's really, really wrong, and that we have to almost correct the record on that. I don't view
nationalism or believing in the sovereignty of your nation first, like Trump employs an America First policy.
That's not nationalism. Again, this is the problem. Trump promoting Americans getting hired over people who are legal residents or undocumented. That's not nationalism. That's not nationalism. And again, it comes down to her not understanding what words mean.
Bolsonaro employs a Brazil First policy. When the sovereignty of your nation is being threatened by outside forces, it's very important that we sort of stand on our own 2 feet and say that we are going to put our nation first. So I answered the question.
And if you actually look at rational choice theory, just as an example, right? One of the things that we try to do as political scientists, and things that other people do in the social scientists, economists, sociologists, whatever, is we try to understand why people do the things they do, what accounts for the things that we see in life. And one of the principles of rational choice theories, a lot of times they'll do different types of games, like the prisoner's dilemma or something. And I recall in my political theory course in my master's degree being described this idea of a series of interactions between people, whether they're one-off. Okay, if you have a one-off interaction versus a series of interactions, if you and another person are doing some sort of deal, and you can do a compromise where you get something, they get something, but none of you get more of what you want, versus a situation where you can act, maybe, let's say, selfishly, and you benefit yourself at the expense of the other party. What you find, and it's pretty logical, I know it doesn't sound like you need a theory for this, but a theory allows you to then account for and explain things. I can't remember which game it was, I'm sorry, but the idea is if you have a one-off instance with someone, you have more incentive to try to maximize your benefit and to their expense. If that's the scenario, like you pay less for an item, you negotiate, you haggle down the person who's selling it, that's more for your benefit. But if you have a repeated games scenario where you have to go back to the same party and do more negotiations, what you find is that people are more willing to start with an equitable distribution and maintain it. Why? Because you need the good faith of the other party to come in. How does this deal with globalism, right? It is not a practical international stance to walk into every room and say, I want what's best for me, and that's it. Why would Britain deal with that? Why would France deal with that? Why would Germany? If you come in a room and you are always saying, me first, my stuff first, I'm not interested in cooperation, I'm only interested in what I can get from you, you are not going to have long-term international cooperation. And so this whole notion of America first is somehow good for America, that's a little bit like saying you don't need anyone to be your friend. You don't need any relationships in your life. And then you get old and you break your leg and nobody comes by to check on you because you're an asshole. And so this is the whole, the defending a selfish policy, defending racism, defending all of this sort of xenophobic stuff under the guise of looking out for your nation. A lot of times cooperation, a little humility is in the national interest, because then you can cooperate with other people and expand the amount of influence or the amount of good you can do or whatever else. So just pointing out how even the reasoning is not borne out by, theories in political science, the stuff she's going on about.
Question and said to them just that, which is that people wrongly conflate the word nationalism to mean that Hitler was a National Socialist, but in my interpretation or from my understanding, I would make the argument that he wasn't a nationalist. He was a homicidal, psychotic maniac.
Again, she wants the no true Scotsman fallacy, insofar as she wants to be able to use words without a historical context. And if Hitler meets the definitions of the things she's talking about, well, no true nationalist would ever do those kinds of things, right?
Who was bent on world domination outside of the confines of Germany, and he wouldn't say that he was a nationalist because he wasn't about putting Germans first. There were German Jews.
He was, again, if you look at Hitler's ideology, he was who he thought was Jewish. Who he thought was German. Hitler was putting who he thought was German first, just like you are advocating for putting who you think are Americans first, Candace. You want to make this video to show the differences between you and Hitler and the way you think about things, and all you're doing is showing me the connections in your ideologies. You reactionary moron.
That he was putting into camps and murdering. He was a mass murderer. So that's what the argument that I was making on stage is that...
She's thinking here, of course, of, sort of, I guess, German citizenship, but Hitler didn't think about it that way. And the white supremacists in the United States and in the White House don't think about it in terms of citizenship. We saw in Texas where the Republicans are systematically trying to harass new citizens, people who have just become naturalized citizens. I don't know if you caught this. The ACLU is suing the state of Texas because they announced this big push to look into voter fraud in Texas. And what they did to assess voter fraud was they looked at people who are listed as legal residents in the driver's license database for Texas. And then they looked at the voting records to see if they could find those people's names. Before the last election, a whole bunch of people in Texas, because Texas is big, there's a lot of people there, naturalized. They became American citizens. And the Republican, I don't know if he's Secretary of State or what his title is, but he basically cross-referenced these two lists and identified anybody who was on both, who was in the past a legal resident and is now voting, as potential fraud, and sent those names to county clerks all over the state of Texas. And the last time I checked, before I saw the ACLU was just suing Texas, was that one county had received 326 names. Not a single one was a fraudulent voter. They were just harassing people who have just become immigrants. Right? We are also seeing that they're doing they're going back and trying to find technicalities for people who have naturalized into citizens in order to deny them, to take away their citizenship. That's what the Republicans are doing. So don't tell me that somehow Hitler's policies of doing it on the basis of ethnicity, of a bloodline, rather than citizenship, is different from what Trump is doing in America. The GOP is doing in America. The GOP is instituting exactly that sort of racist double standard of who counts as American and who doesn't. Not based on legality, but based on their ethnicity and their skin color, Candace. You need to wake the fuck up. Start reading the newspaper. Sorry.
This man by no means,
I went off a little bit.
Should be considered a nationalist. Everything that he did was just being a psychopathic murderer, hell-bent on world domination. So...
Which, at the time, how did he convince a whole country of people to follow a psychopathic murderer, Candace? What was that? He played on racial fears? What was that? He demonized the socialists and the communists and the left? What was that? He made purity standards about the fact that if you're his political opponent, you're also his enemy? Gee, who does that sound like?
Trump has no interest in conquering the world. I don't think Bolsonaro has any interest in conquering the world, and these people are employing a type of nationalism that is desperately needed in times like this. The
kind of nationalism Hitler, if only he had kept it to his own borders, Candace, right? If only he had kept his genocidal policies to his own borders, the way that sort of, Trump wants to, I don't know, withdraw from the intermediate range ballistic missiles treaty with Russia so that Russia can now start arming itself to attack its neighbors or threaten its neighbors. Yeah, that's a really good way to stabilize the globe, by withdrawing into your own little bubble, because that's never worked out poorly before.
You have people that are trying to globalize our economy, and we're seeing that America has been hurt by it and other nations have been hurt by it.
Yeah, and who does that? Oh, wait, it's the rich Republicans who are funding elections, who are working. The NRA helps out getting Republicans elected, and they're filtering Russian oligarch money. Gee, is it really the left who is pushing for open borders in terms of, not open borders, but in terms of free movement of people, of playing nations off each other, going to tax havens, and using countries against each other to benefit, to get themselves the best deals? Is that the communists marching in the streets for that, Candace? Is that the left? No, that's your side. That's the Republicans. So what are you doing to clean up your own house? Oh, wait, you're just demonizing the left so you can cover for them.
And that was the way that I answered the question. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's BuzzFeed. I shouldn't even be doing this video. It's so stupid. But obviously leftist journalists who are crazy are like, oh, she's saying that Hitler would have been great if he had just focused on Germany. No, I'm saying Hitler wasn't a nationalist. And
No, actually what you did say, Candace, is that you did say things about Hitler's problem. Hitler's problem was that he was expansionist. Of course, you didn't use the word expansionist because you don't know what that word means, so you said globalist. But why can't you just admit you didn't speak clearly? Candace, why can't you just say, I didn't express myself the best. I probably should have started preemptively by putting my position of Hitler is an abhorrent person on the line. Where is the personal accountability, Candace? Where is the personal responsibility for your misstatement, for your inability to explain your ideas to the point where, in such a way that people don't need clarification? Instead of whining, learn. You are not good at expressing your ideas. You are not articulate on the fly, so maybe when you're on stage, think, what do I want to say? Before you start talking, what is the point I want to make? And are there any disclaimers or other things I should say just to give myself some wiggle room to not speak from a place of complete authority, to allow for the fact that I could be wrong? No, why would you do anything as honorable as that? Much better to cry and blame the left for taking you at your word and putting on a face validity reading, as opposed to, oh, Candace couldn't have meant something nefarious because she's never, been associated with bad ideas like doxing before.
If Hitler, the only thing that Hitler wanted to do was stay in his country and say, oh, we're making, Germany great again, and he wasn't a homicidal maniac, that we'd be in an entirely different position today, but he was, and there's no excuse or defense ever for everything that he did. I mean, obviously. And
yes, she didn't say that on stage, did she? She didn't say any of this on stage. So again, if you have to explain yourself in this way, and she's perfectly capable of trying to justify her comments now retroactively when they blew up in her face, she could have done it live to prevent this, or at least provide herself with a better framework for what she's doing.
We've learned the lesson of what happened in Europe with National Socialism. And
have you? Have you really? No, I don't think we have, because you know what National Socialism was all about? It was about overriding democratic institutions, bringing down the democratic government by looking to a strongman and a bunch of followers who were less interested in the rule of law, e.g. the Mueller probe and the congressional oversight, than in defending their strongman like Fox News does. So no, Candace, we have not learned our lessons. If anything else, this is closer to repeating history than we've come in 100 years in terms of the actual threat in the executive branch to our constitutional structure. The emoluments clause, the possible espionage that the president is doing on behalf of Russia, the fact that the election was corrupted, the fact that the Republicans have been complicit, that the NRA, their biggest funder, is also tainted by Russian money. You just go down the line and you look at the threat to our democratic institutions above and beyond the problems we already had with campaign finance issues and the power structure and the power of incumbency and everything else. So no, Candace, we have not learned our lesson.
And it's something that will never come to America, like Trump said. So thank you. I just wanted to clear that up because BuzzFeed is crazy.
No, lady, you don't know what words mean. So blame yourself. Get a dictionary, stop and look things up on stage. If you have to stop putting your foot in your mouth. I was astounded, I have to say, because I never really spent that much time listening to Candace. But during her chat with Carl, where both of them did no research whatsoever and just farted at each other out of their mouths. They just talked out of their ass, back and forth. It was just farting back and forth. I was astounded at the idiocy, astounded at the level of idiocy, that it's amazing they get paid for this. I mean, it really just, to me, shows that reactionaries are about their feelings, or they're about their guts. They're not about facts, and they're not interested in learning, they're interested in having their own biases reinforced. All right. Oh, Mike Ball is heading out. Thanks for stopping by, Mike. Calling it a night, but check my Twitter. Oh, for muted signs. Okay, I'll check those out. All right, I will check those out. All right, so what must be getting on? Yeah, half hour. Oh, okay, all right. Let's see. I'm trying to decide if I want to do the chat bit now or if I want to do a kind of a wrap up because I'm a little bit tired. It's been a long week. I will also be, I'll see if I can do maybe a postcard video. I'm leaving for Venice. I know it sounds really awesome. Like I was Prague in January. Now in February, I'm off to Venice. It sounds really exciting, but honestly, I'm going to be sat in a workshop for, I'm going to leave on Wednesday. I'll have maybe 3 or 4 hours in Venice. Then all of Thursday and Friday, I'm going to be in a workshop doing really deep analysis and use cases in coding coding and harmonizing educational levels in surveys across European educational systems. So that's going to be, and the sad thing is I kind of find it interesting. So, that's going to be my exciting time. And then Saturday I fly back, but I will be back here in time for the show next week. So we will be having a Sunday show, unless I have any problems with my flights, on the 17th of February. And then I think the 24th of February is going to be another big hangout day, just doing show announcements, because the YouTube will only let me schedule a Sunday live stream one at a time. I can't do like 5 of them in a row, and so oftentimes I schedule a day or 2 before because I'd forgotten to do it the week before. But anyway, 17th we're going to have a show unless my flight is delayed or something else comes up. And then the 24th of February is my birthday, and I think we're going to do a patron hangout, birthday hangout, and a Sunday live show hangout. All of that because it just happens to be my birthday. And Sunday is a perfect day. Also, I don't want to, here's the thing about birthdays in Germany. Like, I like living in Germany a lot. It's very comfortable. The people are wonderful. The food, there could be better Mexican, but I mean, I understand. It's pretty far away. I lived in Wisconsin, never had good Indian. I never had Indian food living in Wisconsin. So I know geography is often a barrier to these kinds of things. But one thing that is good is Sunday relaxing. One thing that's not good though, on your birthday in the States, like, people do shit for you. Like, your birthday is your day off. You're the queen, you're the princess, you're the king, you're the prince. That's your day, right? You're the birthday child. Geburtstagkind. Sorry, Geburtstagkind. Birthday child, basically. That was horrible pronunciation. But in Germany, it's like you bring other people stuff to celebrate with you. So you do the baking and you bring the brownies to work, or you set up the party and invite people over, and they bring presents. I mean, but it's so much more work. And so I had a really big party on my 40th. I went and I rented out a restaurant, and I invited a bunch of people, and I did all this sort of stuff. And the next year I did something, and eventually I was like, it's too much. So I try to have quiet birthdays. My rule now, as long as I live in Germany, the ones with the zeros, I will do a big party. So I've got a couple years before my 50th. I will do a big in-person party on my 50th birthday here. But other than that, I just want to be left alone on my birthday. I really do. Like, I don't want to have to dress up or go out or anything. Best thing is I'm taking the Friday off. I'm taking the 22nd off of work. That's my birthday present. And the other birthday present, did I say I would talk to you guys? Did I ask you for questions? The other thing is I bought myself a concert ticket, which I've got a note on. So I've tried to imagine Venice isn't warm. 255 says, I have to imagine Venice isn't very warm this time of year. I would agree. The positive to that, though, is that Venice is a hyper-crowded tourist city. It is, from my understanding of people who go during the summer months, it's just a wall of flesh and sweat. So going in February is not a bad idea. Even though the weather's bad, it's much less crowded. So I should be able to get more of an authentic feel. And also, I'm planning on finding a couple hours. I booked my flight for a bit later on Saturday, so I'd have a few hours in the morning on Saturday. And I've given myself some time on the Wednesday before the Thursday event starts so that I can enjoy it. But there's so much history, and it would be nice to be able to enjoy it without lining up forever. Having been to Florence, Is that where I went last? Yeah, I went to Florence. In December and January, I still had to queue up, sometimes for an hour, to get into things that I had tickets for. So not only do you get the tickets to like go and look at an art, inside an art museum. Sorry, I'm stumbling on my words. Then you have to queue up for like 25 minutes just to get in with your ticket. So I think Venice would be the same. Anything else here before I move on? I'll probably have a big party for my 50th because I'd be amazed if you make it that far. I also agree. Is anyone else who, as they age, be like, God, I thought I'd be dead already. Like, I did not plan, like when I was in my 20s. I did not plan on being in my 50s. I did the sort of the retirement thing as you do to kind of hedge your bets. But I never really kind of pictured what 50 or 60 or that would be like. And it's not bad so far. I mean, I'm finding the whole thing is true about, you know, your body starts to break down. I went and just sat down and something twinged in my knee. And then I had to, like, I was limping for the rest of the morning. So yeah, getting old, I guess that's a truism. Sorry. Am I going to get a selfie on a gondola? I don't know. That's a bit cheesy. I will probably do selfies at more historical places. So I would want to... I mean, Venice is at the center of so much of European history because of its role as an economic powerhouse in the trade that they did. The fact that they were such an economic and trading powerhouse gave them influence across Europe, and so many things like, you know, the Crusades and all the other stuff that happened there. And that's just like, you know, after... all the Roman history, I'm sure that there is in that area as well. So I'll probably go more the history stuff because I'm a geek in that way. Probably no gondolas, but if I do, I'll show it on my show. You had a stroke at 34. Wow, James. So yeah, we're really happy you made it to your 35th as well. And yeah, hopefully you've got all your medications sorted out and everything. Wow, that's really scary. Yeah. So we're glad to have you here, James Russell, in the chat. One thing I did do to treat myself for my birthday this year. A friend of mine is also into music, and normally we go see concerts together. So I've seen Radiohead live. I've seen Crystal Fighters. I saw Florence and the Machine while I've been here in Cologne. And I had an opportunity, and I just took it. So I had an opportunity to see Token, who is a rapper. We're going to look at him in a minute, on his video. And I wanted my friend to come and see it with me because he's like my music buddy. We go to concerts together. And normally it's him liking a band and then introducing me, and then we go together and I learn more about the band from him, like Crystal Fighters. But in this case, I was like, oh, Token is going to come to Cologne. He's doing his first world tour. And he was initially going to say yes, but then it's Easter weekend in that time period where he's going to be in Germany. So it didn't work out because of family commitments. And I couldn't decide whether I wanted to give it a miss and then regret not seeing it, or go on my own. And maybe somebody that I know will want to buy a second ticket. And I put it out on Twitter, and I was just looking for validation. People go, yeah, go on your own. And that's fine. So I did. Now I got the ticket to go see Token, and I decided to treat myself by getting the VIP ticket so I can get a selfie with him. So instead of a selfie on the gondola, I will probably... You think Rome was founded... You think Venice was founded after the Roman period? Okay, that's good to know. I will find out when I get back. But yeah, I decided to do the tickets for the Token concert because... yeah, I discovered him... I mean, he had been around for a while. He was a YouTube rapper. I'll go ahead and stream this now, or change the screen. Token started out as a YouTube rapper, kind of like, you know, what I did with Screwface Gene and Dax, who's also really blown up. There's a lot of collabs that he's done lately. Haven't had a chance to keep up with here on the show, but Dax has been killing it. And I'd heard the name Token as one of the people who were coming up as a YouTube rapper that were trying to break it into the mainstream, not just be on YouTube, but be considered a serious artist. He appeared on Sway in the Morning, sorry, on Shade 45. Eminem's, I think, helped produce that station. There's a morning show, a guy named Sway, and people who I watch who do reactions. So I watch, what is it, Dad's Life? I forget the name of the channel because it's in my subscription now. And No Life Shack. They do a lot of reaction videos, and they had done reactions to Token on Sway because he did a freestyle. And his freestyle just kicked ass. It was a really good freestyle. So I watched their reviews, And then he had another song with Tech9 that just was released as a video. So his album came out a while ago. He's been dropping videos, but this is the one that he did for his song with Tech9. And because I'm catching up with, you know, probably about 15 years of hip-hop, I'd heard Tech9's name a lot, but I'd not heard him. So this is a feature, he is featured on Token's song, and this was what made me decide I need to see this kid. He's like, I think 19, so he's definitely a kid, but you can see his talent, and you can see now that he's being acknowledged by credible hip-hop artists who are working with him. He's going to, I think, do well. So if this is his first world tour, he's going to be in Germany. Why not? And honestly, the tickets are like less than £20 to see him live. So what, seriously, like how often how often do I get to see hip-hop artists that come through this area? Not very often. So all of these things, my birthday, the fact that he just done this amazing freestyle, that he had done this feature with Tech9, and it's a great song, I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. But I wanted to share this with you guys a little bit, because what is interesting to me about this song is how they're two different styles. So this comes off of Token's album. You know, he's the main artist on it, but he's got a guest appearance by Tech9. Tech9 has a kind of confidence on the beat that is palpable. And I wanted to just give a little flavor, because it seems to me in this song, Token is like trying to keep up. He is, you know, he's coming up and he's working with an artist who's just established and knows his craft. And Token is doing a good job, but you can see the difference in this video, at least to me, between somebody starting out and someone who is just can do it in their sleep. It's too easy. It's just too easy. And the image I have is, you remember the guy who plays Spider-Man in the Avengers, you know, the Civil War or whatever? Yeah, kind of bouncy, energetic, youthful. That's how Token comes across to me in this video. If I had to describe it another way, if you think about the beat, Token is running to catch the beat. He's like racing up and jumping on the beat, right? He's forward moving in his lyrics. He's writing words to land on the beat. Here's how I describe Tech9. Tech9 is waiting for the beat to come to him. He's sitting there almost like a catcher. He's waiting to catch the beat and do something with it. So I want you to kind of keep these in mind as you listen to the first part of it, because I don't know if I can put on captions. I don't know if it is captioned. Let's see first. I can't really break down the lyrics. No, I don't want the translations, and I don't want to share it. That's not at all what I wanted. It doesn't seem that I can do any captioning. Okay, so we're just going to have to go with as much as you can figure out. I'm not going to break down all the bars, but I will mention a couple. So I'll just say, like, look at the difference between running to catch the beat versus, or running to catch up with the beat or land on the beat, versus like a catcher in baseball who's got his glove and just waiting for the ball to land right in the center of his mitt. And for me, that's the interesting thing about, one of the interesting things about this song. So Token featuring Tech9, let's go.
And I'm rolling.
Oh, hold on. I see it's coming up. Oh, I wonder if it's just too quiet. All right. I'll just let it run because I'm not hearing it in my... Ah, there we go. That's better. Also, this beat, sorry, I won't get a copyright strike because I stop it all the time. This beat it's very minor key. I'm noticing that Token, at least in some of his songs, he's got that kind of a minor key thing. He's got kind of like an eerie, slightly dark stuff. Maybe it's just because I'm just starting with his music and I'm catching a lot of that in the early songs, but it is an interesting, it sounds really harsh, this beat, and a bit, tech, or the word I'm looking for, but how they jump on it later is great. All right, I'm gonna shut up now.
Yeah. When I was younger, I didn't know what to do with myself. Freestyle to freestyle, proving myself. Started focusing on a mission more than spitting, but the feeling that I was missing was the want to kill everybody else. And I'm not violent, I just need to be protected now. My boy just got himself a little pistol, he might shoot it at you. Who am I after? Anyone I gotta stick, I put in my poo-poo platter. Use the chatter, but I get way too much pussy to be a YouTube rapper.
Shoot you actors, not with the way Hoot Loop captures with a G-Crew master. Doo-doo, blast your block with a K-Cuckoo clappers from a Subaru chapter. Tell me how you wanna do it, should I nuke you bastards? Or should I go and get him with a count? Doo-doo, faster, do you faster?
Who'd you rather go against? I control the web like a computer hacker. I've been abusing rappers since animal crackers and shoots and ladders. Put him in a comatose and I'm going ghost, feel like I'm cool with Casper. Torture everybody, put him in a group on camera like it's a Uvu gather.
But I gotta choose me to try to hoot too mad. There's guess I'm the truth and a boost to Zeus who's gasser. But buku flashers on social media say I do truth backwards. Fuck your poops loose with a Duke shoot smasher. I'm solid.
So I don't know if you guys got that. You can kind of feel the difference. But oh my gosh, like when Tech 9 rolls up and he's just like so chill on it. And Token, who I admire as a young guy coming up. He's got so many skills. But he's just so eager. He's so bouncy. And Tech 9 is just like, boom, boom, boom. I love it. I love the command and the confidence that he has on this track. And it's really good. So I won't do too much more on this. You guys can check that out. But this was, watching him and watching this song in particular was what convinced me, like, yep, definitely want to see this live. This is an artist that I want to be able to say, I saw him live in his first world tour. And I can. So happy birthday to me. That's it. That's what I wanted to share with you guys, because I am trying to continue on with my hip-hop education. I'm going to be spending today doing more on Tech 9. So this was, like I said, my first time hearing him, even though I've heard his name a lot. My knees got weak. His flow, it feels just so powerful and so, laid back and confident. It's great that I want to hear more of him and from him. So I'm going to be doing some deep diving on Tech 9. But at least with Token, I can watch him in concert for under 20 euros, which is pretty cool. Okay. That was it. So I think the last thing, really, the only thing I've missed that I can tell you is we try to do a bit of social science, philosophy of social science every time. So now last time I got in a little bit of trouble because I jumped in using a term that I hadn't set up earlier. So I thought, wow, Science, Nature, and Society is a very, very, very long chapter. Did we talk about... Yes, I think we actually talked about reflexivity. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs from... Rationality is rule following. We talked a bit about rational choice theory, right? Cultures, traditions, and hermeneutics. Well, let's see what this has to say. So again, I'm going to do a quick little excerpt from The Philosophy of Social Science, The Philosophical Foundations of Social Thought by Ted Benton and Ian Krebs, published by Palgrave Macmillan. Chapter 6. We now move on to a very different notion of rationality and a different conception of what is involved in understanding human action, a conception which gives more prominence than does Weber to the culture in which the social actor is situated and the nature of language itself. Ooh, this is fun. The starting point here is the discussion in the previous chapter about whether reasons can be understood as causes. It was suggested that there are these arguments. Sorry, my lighting is poor. I'm going to put a little bit more light on. That's easier now. It was suggested that there are these arguments. Sorry, we try that a third time. Hopefully, I do takes on my audio. You don't hear this stuff. I edit this out. It was suggested that there are these arguments. No, it was suggested these. That's why I was stumbling. It was suggested in the previous chapter that there were these reasons that can be understood as causes, that employing concepts that are too simple and static to enable us to understand the complexities of human action. I'm really sorry, you guys. I'm going to edit that bit out in your minds, all right? Pretend I didn't do that poorly. We begin to move into the complexity when we look at the other side of the argument, that reasons are not and cannot be causes of actions. This argument has been important in Anglo-Saxon philosophy, which has been dominated by the originally Australian Ludwig Wittgenstein, a leading figure in the linguistic turn. The conventional interpretation of Wittgenstein's work turned into what was referred to earlier as the under-laborer conception of the relationship between philosophy and science. Science, as it were, delivers the goods, and the philosopher is only important if the scientist runs into difficulties. The difficulties are linguistic, and the job of the philosopher is to unravel the knots in the conceptual wool so that the scientist can go on knitting. This view was contested in a radical manner in the late 1950s in a book called The Idea of a Social Science by Peter Winch. We will see that Winch uses Wittgenstein's ideas to raise a number of questions, not only about the possibility of a social science, but also about the possibility of understanding cultures other than our own, and the issue of relativism. We will concentrate on Winch's work and implication in the first part of this chapter. We will then turn to the more recent works of Alistair McTierney, I think is his name, or her name, it could be both, I've seen, then to a major figure in continental European philosophy, Hans-Georg Gadamer. Although they do not explicitly develop each other's works, their ideas can be situated in the same broad family. And so then I'll just do one last bit off of this, which is Peter Winch. They're going to quote from the flyleaf of his book, Philosophy and Social Science. On the flyleaf of his book, Winch quotes the German philosopher Lessing, and this is the quote I'll end with. It may indeed be true that moral actions are always the same in themselves, however different may be the time, and however different the society in which they occur. But still, the same actions do not always have the same names, and it is unjust to give any action a different name from that which is used to bear in its own times and amongst its own people. All right, so we're going to stop there. Language, games, and rules. This is also a really fun thing to think about, especially in terms of like when Wittgenstein develops. But anyway, there's your social science nerd for the day. We will take now a few more questions. I'll take a few more questions from the chat. I will close down my video of Token and Tech9 in case that's being demanding on the system, so we don't get all choppy. And if you guys have any last minute stuff, Mithril Hunt says he's not a rap fan, but he reminded me a lot of early Eminem. Yeah, I think a lot of the younger white rappers are heavily influenced by Eminem. I think, well, not just white rappers, I think a lot of people are, but particularly with Midwestern or that sort of similar accent to the Detroit, the upper Midwest accent that Marshall Mathers has. When I hear Token say the word yapping, I hear Marshall, I hear M, so I understand that. Although he's got, there's a good No Life Shack review where he's like, he's not Eminem, you know, just because he's a white rapper and he uses the same accent, you know, don't conflate. Anyway. Right. Oh, did I say Wittgenstein was Australian? If I did so, that was wrong. Yes, he was Austrian. Sorry. Sometimes when I read on the fly, it's I make mistakes, and I will own up to those. Let's see. Says Venice seems to be founded in the 5th century of the Common Era, 421 of the Common Era. I know you say AD, but that privileges Christian. It puts Christianity at the center of world history, and that's why I use Common Era instead of and before the Common Era, BC and CE instead of AD and BC. Yeah, so they're just looking for more question. Can I save Steve Shive's life or Kevin Lug? If I just pick between Steve and Kevin, who would I pick? No, I don't have to, so I'm not going to. I don't know if I've talked. Okay, so Lee says, I don't know if you talked about this before. And live recently got into the hip-hop genre. How do I parse sexism and homophobia? Yeah, I've talked a little bit about it, but I guess it's worth bringing up because it's a constant thing that I have to deal with. So, can there ever be an Austrian-Australian or an Austrian-Australian? Sorry, that's another comment in the chat. Hold on one second. Yeah, homophobia and sexism are blemishes. To me, that's how I perceive them. They're blemishes in the art. They're blemishes in the artwork. That's how I end up reconciling them. I was recently, there was a review of an Eminem song. I can't remember the title of it, but by the end of it, and also by reading some of the comments in the review video, I realized that what he had done was written a horror story almost as a song, and it was incredibly graphically and sexually violent and misogynistic. And there's also the element that horror stories do have that element. So it's, I understand why in a horror genre he would use horror genre tropes. On the other hand, it's just so shocking to hear him. We're used to seeing, I guess, violent images, but if you wanted to make a rap song into a horror movie, what you have to say is also shocking. So the way that I try to reconcile it is to not excuse it. The homophobia makes me uncomfortable. It diminishes my experience. The misogyny makes me feel uncomfortable. It ruins the art for me. It is a flaw in the art. It is a permanent tear or mark or stain or whatever else. However, it is part of the artwork because that's how the artist made it. So I can't, one could just say, I'm not going to listen to anything that I find offensive. I don't know how you can operate like that though. So then the onus becomes on us to figure out how we're going to relate to different artists. One thing I will say that because of my experiences now with hip hop and also watching some of the documentaries about the history and the development, the mentality of the culture of battle rap as well. The idea of, sort of like what you say in the ring and what you say out of the ring, or, while you're battling, what's off limits, what's not off limits, and why. And I think that in the case of Eminem, I probably have more exposure to him, mostly because I just known him as an artist for longer, and obviously as a white rapper, he was given privilege on Top 40. I've been more exposed to his music on the radio simply because he was white and got more airplay. That's just true. But as a consequence, I can see more of the body of his work, over the course of his life, and also to see that now as he's getting into his mid 40s and 50s, he's doing a little bit of self-censorship. He did a little, it wasn't enough, but he silenced out or reversed the song words on a homophobic slur. He, in his recent freestyle, he did like an 11 minutes of freestyling a video that he uploaded with crazy misogynistic lyrics in it. Like if you bail on the first bits of that, I understand. In that freestyle that he does, if you watch that and watch the first things that he raps, it's violent and misogynistic. If you keep going, it moves on from that. But at the very end of his performance, he says, kind of quoting a line that he did in Kill Shot and also another song, I'm just playing ladies, I love you. So in other words, what I'm saying about women in the ring is not what I really, want to do. It's part of what's in my head. It's my art. I think with Eminem, again, knowing him better than anyone else, I think my take on M is that he makes his art for himself. He makes his art based on the words in his head and the experiences he has had. And there is very little filter. There's very little filter between him and his art. And he puts his art into the world with the assumption that people understand it's art. And when people take it at face value, or he has to explain, this is what I say in the studio, this is my art, this isn't like what I'm giving it as advice. I think that he is being almost too honest with what goes on in his head. And for me, at least, it's a bit of an insight into his mindset, the framework of growing up as he did, the values in terms of masculinity and the views of women, everything else. It's a bit of a psychological insight. I don't think there's a lot of filtering going on there. And that includes all the ugliness inside of him. His art includes whatever is dark in there about him or in his life or in his brain at that time. And so I think for me, again, with this particular example is I'm getting an authentic view of him and the homophobia and the misogyny. Hopefully he's maturing out of, but that's where he was. And it's not excusing it. It makes me feel really uncomfortable, but also acknowledging that was part of who he was or who he is. So, yeah, and when I hit those words, it cringes. I cringe. I stop enjoying the music as much. It takes me out of the moment. Absolutely does. And so I don't know. It was really super long. So, yeah. So some of my favorite artists were god awful as people in various ways. I agree. This is it. You know. I think I described it maybe once to Kevin or on a happy hour. Like if I looked up at a piece of architecture, but part of the beautiful construction of the cathedral or the building or whatever it was made with cardboard and human shit and excrement and garbage, like the whole thing itself would still be an amazing structure, but then there'd just be garbage in it. And that's how I feel about bigotries in music generally. So yeah, okay. Well, hey, I think we're getting to the end of the show. Oh my gosh, it's 2 minutes after the top of the hour. You guys, time flies. It's so much fun. I really do enjoy these Sunday chats, and I know that it's not as good as a prepared video, but it's nice to be able to be spontaneous. And because I've got my muted sign now, things are getting better. I'm learning OBS, and just getting up on the screen and having a nice chat with you guys. And I always really, really, really appreciate that. HK says, Eminem always reminded me of Looney Tunes. I would agree with that. Sorry, I started drinking my coffee. Hold on, let me finish. If you go back and you look at It Feels So Empty Without Me. Sorry, I had to get there, to get to the chorus in my head. He's definitely playing a character and going on stage and having that persona to be Slim Shady and to be ridiculous. The way that he does his voice on those, he becomes a lot more nasally and he overproduces it. He puts in jokes and points out his punchlines, you know, a bit more in that shady character. So yeah, I can see Looney Tunes. He gives that impression in his videos, especially the early things. Have I had a haircut? So what is the status of my hair? I washed it last night and I slept on it, so it's very flat. Normally, if I'm doing a show, I'll wash it before the show and I'll blow dry it. And this is air dried. So yeah, although I am thinking my hairdresser has layered this side and left this side a little blunter, like more even. And I think I need to tell her that this side needs to grow out to be more like this side, because right now this is like the 1960s and this is like the 1920s, and I need to be even on both sides. But we'll get there. I'm still working on my hair strategy. A delightful way to end a Sunday night for you. Great, James. Glad that you're here and that you enjoyed it. I want to thank you guys in the chat for participating, for asking awesome questions, for listening to me natter, and for helping me get better at doing this. You guys are my guinea pigs on which I practice my audiovisual skills. So, I've got a news for you. To wrap it up, how would you guys like a Tuesday happy hour? I think I can set that up for you. So, I already have agreement. We're going to be setting it up, I guess, in the next day here, because it's not really that long. I'm going to do a happy hour on Tuesday, and we're going to have a very special guest. We're going to bring on someone that we've talked to a lot on the Twitters, but we've not had on the happy hour. I think he's going to be a really interesting and fun guest to have on. So on Tuesday of this coming, in 2 days' time, unless something changes with the schedule, Dusty Smith, I am happy to announce, will be joining Kevin and me for a happy hour. I suspect that will be on my channel. I think it's my turn to host. We'll also see if there's a lot of audio and visual that we'll need to do. But yeah, I think it should be a fun hour and change with Dusty Smith. He is, snarky AF, and Kevin and I are snarky, and we can all crap on reactionary right-wing douchebags. So if that sounds like fun, join us on Tuesday, and if you can't catch us live, catch us later. So until next time, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. 1960s, sorry, someone's saying 1920s and 1960s are two favorite decades. So yeah, I've got like half on, yes. Now, and of course the 1960s are a throwback to the 1920s. If you look at it, the influences in terms of like the bob cut and all that, it's definitely a callback. And I didn't realize this, but the 1920s, the whole look in the 1920s, like with the Egyptian, sort of like the blunt cut here and the dark eyes, they were doing a lot of archaeology and coming up with King Tut's tomb and all of that was very fashionable. So it's the 1920s in some ways is like a callback to an even earlier period, and the 60s is a callback to the 20s, and now I'm calling back in the 21st century to the 20th century. There's nothing new under the sun. But anyway, guys, I have been Kristi. You have been awesome. People in the chat, you rock. People watching in the future, you also rock. Come back to the channel for Tuesday night. Dusty Smith, Kevin Logan, Kristi Winters, all in one place. What could possibly go wrong? All right, goodbye. That's it. I don't really have a good wrap up for the show. So, mwah! Until next time, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again really soon. Bye. Stop streaming. There we go. All right, got the button. Okay.